Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Feel free to get settled in. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Hi again, everybody. Ryan here. We're going to start in about 2 minutes. And while we wait, I invite you to change your Zoom name to include your full name and organization, please. I haven't done that on my own, so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, team, it's 3 minutes past. Are we ready to get started? Okay, let's do it. Welcome again, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Estriato, and I'm the Director of Data Programs at the Office of Cradle-to-Career Data. I want to thank everybody, our task force members in particular, for being here. We are going to kick off what is now the third meeting of this eTranscript task force, today focusing on UC and CSU eligibility. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kathy in just a moment. As you know, from the last two meetings, Kathy Booth and Wested have been facilitating this task force, so big thanks to them for their work. And especially big thanks to you for taking the time out of your day to join us in doing this work. So with that, let's get started. I will turn it over to Kathy.
Thanks so much, Ryan. All right, so today we're going to be talking specifically about various advising tools that would benefit from having better connections amongst existing data sets. So we're going to be focusing in on two tools in particular. One, which is managed by the California College Guidance Initiative, that's for high school students, and another that's the CSU Transfer Planner that's actually there to help out folks that are in community college that want to go to CSU. But there's other tools that might benefit from this type of connection of resources. So the underlying issue is that when courses are going to be accepted by a different body, whether that is our four-year institutions evaluating the courses that students took in high school to determine if they're eligible, or whether a particular community college course will count toward a particular major at CSU or UC, those are all individual agreements that are governed between individual institutions, which makes it very confusing if you're a student trying to understand whether the courses that you've taken are going to help you get to the goals that you've set. And that's why some of these tools exist, to make it a lot clearer. We have an opportunity in that there are different data sets that exist in different parts of the state that have the critical information that's necessary to connect the specific courses that students have taken with the eligibility requirements. But right now, they're not optimally connected. So what we're going to be talking about today in the first part is ways that we could use eTranscript California to make advising tools more effective. And then after that, we're going to look at an emerging issue related to understanding how dual enrollment courses count toward high school eligibility requirements to go to our four-year institutions, which is a function of the fact that we now have so many more people taking community college courses or CSU courses while they're in high school that might then make them want to try to figure out how those fit both for college purposes and for original application purposes. And throughout this, we want to make sure that we're getting input from all of you. So next slide, please. So for members of the public that are joining us, you can use the Q&A function that's down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see there's two little dialogue bubbles in the words Q&A or letters Q&A. So you can click on that and you can post your questions. So what we'll be doing is we'll be tracking, and when we can answer them in written form, we'll do so. Sometimes we'll elevate the questions that you're posing to members of the task force or the panelists. And you can also send comments into the Cradle-to-Career email address, info@c2c.ca.gov. So that we really can understand how the public is thinking about these ideas. Next slide, please. So this is a fun one. Throughout this process, we've been trying to look at a variety of different topics that we attempted to put onto this very large and messy map. And so if you'll click once, it'll help focus in on what we're going to be doing today. So if you just click once on that slide. There we go. You can see that what we're specifically looking at is the way that eTranscript California data can pass information to californiacolleges.edu.ccgi's tools and to the transfer planner to be able to understand how these issues fit together. So I'm going to pass the mic over now to Heather Allen from CCGI, who's going to be explaining the tools that are available for high school students.
All right, thanks so much, Kathy. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. Before we get started, I wanted to pose a quick question to the audience. You can post your response in the Q&A, or you can just think about it. But really, has anyone on this call supported someone, right? Whether it's a student, whether it's a child or a niece or a nephew, to understand the A through G requirements, right? Which are those minimum eligibility requirements for entry into the CSU or UC. And if you have, what was that like? Let's take just a second to think about that. And I want you, if you've done it before, think about how that process felt for you. And if you haven't, I hope I answer some of your questions as we go. All right, next slide. So if you haven't helped someone with the A through G requirements before, maybe you're not as familiar with what those are. A through G refers to the minimum 15 courses that a high school student must complete in order to be eligible for admission to the CSU and UC. Now, the A through G subject areas are the same for both the CSU and UC, but actually both systems within those subject requirements have some different rules and some different validation processes about which courses fulfill requirements for their systems. CaliforniaColleges.edu is the state of California's official college and career planning platform for high school students. And within that tool, students in our partner districts are able to see their progress towards meeting the entrance requirements for the CSU system and the UC system distinctly. High schools that we partner with send us transcript data, and then we use our platform to visualize that so that students have a view about how their high school coursework is progressing towards meeting those requirements. And I'm going to show you really quickly what that looks like on our platform so you get an idea of what students may see. Okay, here we go. So here you see us. Let's see this. Can we see my screen? Eligibility tools. Yes, okay, great. So here you see a landing page of where a student who logs into californiacolleges.edu might land. And as they go to their academic planner, there's a quick view of all of their high school coursework that their district has provided to us. And up here at the top, there are two separate tabs. One that surfaces a view of their CSU eligibility and another that does their UC eligibility. So we're going to click in really quick to this student in our demo students example. Here at the top in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a calculation of their current CSU GPA, and also just a visual indicator about how well that student is progressing towards meeting the requirements. In this case, you see the student doesn't quite yet have that bullseye marked, and there's some information on the screen about subject areas that they may need to take a really close look at. Down below, you see a visualization of their coursework. Again, their high school has passed course level information, and we're then visualizing it to the student. Here, for example, in subject area A, you'll see that the student has taken 2 courses. They're indicated in green, a world history course and a US history course. And this green check mark over here indicates that the student is on track. They are meeting the expected requirements for subject area A. This does this for each subject area for students, and it gives them some additional information. For example, right here is this little note that tells a student that the discipline hasn't been met. Subject area B is not yet fulfilled for this student. Another example down here in subject area D for science, right? The student has completed 2 years, but the disciplines for A through G have not been met. And what that means is that for the CSU, for example, a student must do a year of biological science and a year of physical science. And in this case, the student has actually done 2 years of biological science. So they actually have not yet fulfilled or met the requirement in that subject area. And the tools go all the way down through subject area G, showing students progress towards fulfilling those requirements, and also give them some additional information about different courses their district sent to us that we weren't able to verify as fulfilling an A through G requirement yet. And I'll show you more about kind of what that means and how those courses populate there. But again, a view for the CSU and also a view for the UC about student eligibility from their coursework. Okay, let's pop back up. There we go. All right, next slide. How our tools, go back one more. How our tools work, the way we're able to surface this information to students as either meeting, as fulfilling a requirement, is that when districts send us information, we are sort of bouncing that information. We're checking it in the background against the UCOP's course management portal. The course management portal, or we call it the CMP, is the place where every institution in California that serves high school students, they must submit their course list, right, of courses to the course management portal for review by the UC. Once those courses are reviewed, if they're approved, they are then designated as fulfilling A through G requirements for the purpose of admission to both the CSU and UC. In the background, California Colleges is then taking the official CMP course list for every school. And when a district sends us their transcript data, we're verifying that data against the CMP in order to return back to students and educators that visualization of which courses have positively been matched and identified as fulfilling A through G subject area requirements for the student. Next slide. And this is just what you saw on the screen in californiacolleges.edu. The courses that we are able to CMP verify are those that show up for students in green or in red or this light blue color. These courses that you see in green are courses where the course has been verified against that CMP, like it's on the school's list, it's in the right year and the right subject area with the right transcript abbreviation. We can match all of those features and positively say this is a verified A through G course. The ones in green are courses where students have earned a grade of C or better, as is required for those eligibility requirements. Courses that you see in red are those that actually we were able to match the course against the CMP, but the student did not earn a qualifying grade in that course. The ones in that light blue are courses that the student maybe currently has in progress. So one really neat feature about these tools that are very different than most of the student information systems in California is that we actually are able to apply the validation rules of both the CSU and UC systems to the view that students see. So you'll notice in this example that student got a D in Math 2A. However, Area C still has that green check mark, and that's because that subject area has been validated by higher level coursework, right? The rules defined by the CSU say that when a student has completed the more advanced course, they're able to validate some of the courses below it. And this is an example of that happening. And so here the student and the educator know that the minimum requirement in subject area C has been met. It's still in red because this still may be a course that the student should do recovery for, right? Try to earn a higher grade for the purpose of their GPA. But subject area C has been met and the validation rule has been applied and would be applied when the student then applies to the CSU. Next slide. Now, something really interesting that our tools do is that we also call out really distinctly courses that cannot be matched against the CMP. And those surface at the bottom of the student's tool in yellow. Courses in yellow are courses where the district indicated to us through the record they sent that a course should be fulfilling an A through G requirement. But when we attempted to verify that data against the district's own CMP course list, we couldn't verify that it met A through G, right? There was maybe something off. It could be something like the district forgot to include that course on their list in that school year. One of the features that California Colleges does in partnership with our districts is help to identify and resolve that type of an issue. But there are also courses that are parts of a student's high school transcript that do meet A through G requirements, potentially, or that do meet minimum eligibility requirements for the CSU, but that cannot be verified against the CMP. And so a yellow course always indicates that there is an action required in that student's college application. In this example that you see here, this is an art appreciation course that was taught at the community college and that we could not verify against the course management portal. And so that's surfacing to the student in yellow to say, it doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? It does not mean that this course can't be used towards meeting admissions requirement, but it does mean that we could not match that against the CMP. And so there will be an action required when you go to complete your college application. Next slide. Now, as we think about dual enrollment courses, I spend a lot of time in rooms full of high school superintendents and principals and school counselors, and dual enrollment is top of mind for a lot of practitioners in the field. And that's because, right, we have so much growth in dual enrollment, people are very interested in it. And the question that we always get is, well, why are they showing up in yellow? What's happening here? And so we always try to explain the reason that a dual enrollment course is surfacing in yellow in californiacolleges.edu, right? And that is for a couple of reasons. I mean, one primary reason, right? Dual enrollment courses can't be matched against the course management portal because that course management portal contains the high school's list of high school courses. So it can't be matched against that screen. It's also because we at California Colleges, when students send us data, when it can be matched, we then provide students the option that they can import their coursework, that verified coursework, directly into Cal State Apply, or beginning next fall, also UC Apply, right? So those courses move over with an aim of smoothing the process for our students, making the application process smoother and helping them to reduce errors that they experience when they're trying to manually enter a full high school transcript. But we can't and don't want to move dual enrollment courses automatically to and through into the high school coursework section of their college applications. Instead, those courses need to be manually entered into the college application section of their CSU and UC application. And that's really on purpose because both applications recognize dual enrollment courses differently than they do high school courses. They're pre-programmed to say a semester of eligible dual enrollment coursework is equivalent to a year of high school coursework in terms of meeting an A through G requirement. But that needs to be manually entered correctly into the application to make sure that kids get the right credit for the coursework that they have completed. Because they are manually entering that, they also have to manually enter which A through G subject area each dual enrollment course fulfills in order to make sure that that course is considered as part of their total picture towards eligibility for meeting those minimum A through G requirements or above. Next slide. Now, students have to enter it manually, right, to match those dual enrollment courses in their college applications. But sometimes that's a more challenging task than you might imagine. That course management portal does not contain course lists for colleges, right? It's really the list of high school courses in California from each high school. So those courses, the colleges aren't on the CMP list. And dual enrollment courses that the high schools are even offering on their campuses are not to be included as part of their high school course list. Again, that's by design because we want these understood and recognized and entered as college courses in their applications. So students are referred instead, and counselors are referred to look at Assist, as well as additional resources provided by both the CSU and the UC to understand how a college course fulfills A through G requirements. Next slide. So Assist that they're being referred to is the official course transfer and articulation system for California's public colleges and universities. Assist helps students and counselors identify whether coursework taken at the California Community College is transferable to the CSU or UC, and whether or not a course fulfills CSU GE breadth requirements, the CSU American Institutions requirements, or the IGETC requirements, right, for transferability into both systems. And that's really what Assist outlines really clearly for students. Next slide. But there are some challenges there for high school students and high school counselors trying to use Assist currently to really inform their college applications for high school students. First, Assist is really a transfer tool, right, and an articulation tool. It doesn't specifically indicate which A through G subject requirements a course meets. And so high school counselors and students, unfortunately, there's still many students doing these applications without direct support or one-on-one support as they're going through, are then attempting to cross-reference information from multiple sources to understand how or whether or which A through G subject area requirement the high school course or the college course that they took may or may not meet when they go to do their freshman application for admission to the CSU or UC. So many high school counselors are unfamiliar with Assist. It's a transfer tool, so they may not be working in that tool with the same frequency or familiarity, certainly, that folks who work at the community college or the CSU or UC might have. And students certainly are not familiar with Assist or how to map courses from a CSU GE breadth requirement or a GETC requirement back to the A through G requirements that they hear about pretty frequently from their high school campuses, right? Another challenge is that the high school transcript itself may only contain a partial picture of the college coursework that students have taken along the way. So high school practices vary pretty significantly across our state in terms of which college courses do or don't get recorded to the transcript. For dual enrollment courses taken during the school day, I'd say that's generally kind of a stronger association to the high school transcript. But there are also courses that students may take outside of, beyond the school day or over the summer, or students may be taking classes from multiple different community college campuses over the course of their high school term. And so the high school transcript may or may not be inclusive of students' full set of college coursework. And that makes it really hard as a counselor who only has a view on the high school transcript to help support a student to correctly enter their courses into the application. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I should. Part of why I know this work is I asked you to think back about how it felt to help a student do this, to do the A through G requirements. I spent 15 years in a K-12 system. I was a high school counselor and then a high school leader. And so I've worked with lots and lots of students and counselors and kids through this process. And so not only in my role at CCGI now, where I have the fortune of sort of meeting educators from across the state, but also through my personal experience of really wanting helping to lead other counselors and lead students through the application process, this is a pain point that surfaces kind of a lot because folks really want to do the right thing and really want to help students be successful, but it isn't clear or simple all the time about how these courses map and how students should enter them. So, and the biggest risk here and the worry here and the thing that we always are trying to get right on behalf of students is that if they don't enter their coursework correctly, they may be denied admission to universities to which they're actually eligible, right? The process really depends on students fulfilling those minimum requirements in order to be considered for admission. And so students are taking dual enrollment courses as part of their core set of coursework. And if they make a mistake, right? If they don't know how to correctly enter that, if they do not enter a course in a core subject area that is required, there is always a risk that they may not demonstrate to the system that they have met those minimum requirements. And so that's why building as much clarity for educators and for students about how courses fulfill those needs is really important for the students in our state. I do see, next slide, that there are also very significant opportunities in front of us because this is a significant issue worth solving. And at least from our perspective at californiacolleges.edu, just as high school credit courses that districts give to us can be electronically verified by matching them against the CMP and passing them through californiacolleges.edu. There is certainly opportunity where we could receive college credit course records, dual enrollment course records from somewhere and bounce those against a common repository in order for students to have a fuller picture of their eligibility, right? And to have an opportunity for that data to be able to move electronically on their behalf as well. That would certainly require a common data source for all those college records, such as eTranscript California, as well as a mapping, right, between that common repository and the A through G requirements for high school students. So certainly some challenges, but also big opportunities as we think about how data can move in new and different and enhanced ways for the students in our state. Next slide. All right, and that ends my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Heather. That was very clear about how complicated this process is. I know that I had a student who was trying to apply to UC, and we got quite snarled on the A to G requirements, not even having dual enrollment classes in the mix. And so I think this is one of those places where we can look at taking that administrative burden off of students by having the data sets be linked. So I'm going to move us over to our next speaker, April Gromo from CSU, who will describe the new CSU transfer planner and the role that eTranscript could play in helping to support that tool work more effectively.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Next slide, please. So the CSU Transfer Planner is a free online tool for students at community colleges who are interested in transferring to a CSU. It is mobile friendly and provides 24/7 access. So if a student wanted to plan their transfer pathway at 2 o'clock in the morning, they could do so. It also provides the ability for the students, the CSU, and community colleges to be able to see information and really advise students from one source. It's also a tool to help students understand and educate them about the transfer process. Many students say that they want to transfer, but they don't understand the details of the transfer process. Also, our goal when we built the transfer planner was to recognize all community college courses. We know that students are going to multiple community colleges sometimes to get the courses that they need. So we knew it was important to build in and leverage all of the assist data that is available so students knew if they took a course at one community college, what that fulfilled so that they didn't take it again at a second community college. Next slide. So the features of the CSU Transfer Planner allow students to research CSU campuses and majors, track the programs that they're interested in at CSU campuses, and track their progress towards general education. And soon they'll be able to track their major requirements as we integrate more with ASSIST data. They can enter and maintain their academic history and information. So this includes courses and any AP or IB or CLEP test scores. They can track their transfer progress, their general education courses, as well as their transferable GPA. They can also access the ASSIST agreements all in one place. And this is done based on the programs that they're interested in and the community college that they're attending. And then we also provide information to them about their associate degree for transfer and whether or not that associate degree for transfer that they're pursuing at the community college is deemed similar to the one that they're interested in pursuing at the CSU for that major. Next slide. So this screenshot is the dashboard that students see when they go into the CSU Transfer Planner. So it's really an overall tool to help students manage their transfer process. So you can see at the top here, this student example, Kimberly, is following 5 programs. So those 5 programs could be at different CSUs. They could be at the same CSU or maybe 2 or 3. It shows the number of courses they've completed that go towards their transfer, their number of transfer units. Also in the what's next section, this is really the guided piece of the transfer planner to help students understand what they should do next to fill out the transfer planner. In the lower left-hand corner is their followed programs. You can see in this example for general education progress, the student has completed 21 of their 39 lower division general education requirements, and then also their overall transfer progress and next steps. We also have some rotating transfer tips that are updated based on the time of year. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the mobile version of this same page. As you can imagine, it scrolls down for the student to see the information. And also things are a little bit different, like for example, the transfer tips doesn't have a picture. Next slide. So for general education, we're allowing students, as students enter their academic history, we're auto-matching their course and tests to their general education requirements. We're also providing students milestone badges so they can see in their badge area the items that they have completed. Also providing them information about the Golden 4, which are 4 general education courses that are required to transfer as an upper division transfer. And then also providing them a progress bar so they can see where they are in that general education completion. Next slide. So as I've mentioned a couple times, one of the things that the transfer planner is dependent on is for the student to manually add their coursework and test scores. So students do that by entering the college that they've attended or the colleges that they're attending, depending on their academic history and what they've done so far. And then they'll be able to use the add course feature to be able to specifically add their courses into the transfer planner. We do this by leveraging ASSIST data, which is something that we do in our Cal State Apply application today. So once a student indicates the college that they're entering the coursework for, they can start typing the course information and it will do a match for them so they can see the course that they can enter. So by selecting the course, it does shortcut a little bit because then the student will default in the credits and the information on that course for that specific school. Next slide. So really there are some big opportunities for us with eTranscript California potentially and the CSU Transfer Planner. We could incorporate into the transfer planner the ability and the authorization on behalf of students to be able to request their transcript data from the community colleges. And this would allow us the ability to import those courses to the transfer planner. Our goal would be to request it after each term, as long as the student had told us they're still attending that community college. And that would really allow us the ability for students to see their true progress towards general education and major prerequisites. It would also save students the ability for manually entering the coursework, and also would keep up to date the transfer planner without student intervention. The other exciting part of this is we could move that data from the transcript information to the student's application when they're ready to apply. And this would also help the student from not having to enter that coursework information, and also provide to the CSU campuses the ability to know that that is official coursework and be able to make admissions decisions much more quickly. Next slide. And I'm happy to take any questions.
We've got a couple of questions that have come in through the chat or Q&A that are actually for Heather. So April, let's see, are there any questions that are specific to the CSU transfer planner before we loop back and answer those questions? Okay, hearing none. Mia, do you want to unmute and ask your question directly for Heather?
Yeah, thank you both, Heather and April, for your really illuminating presentations. Heather, I was curious, how often do high schools send their curriculum and student transcript data to californiacolleges.edu, and how reliably and consistently is that tool up to date?
Great, thank you for the question. So districts send us data at least monthly, although our most frequent use case is actually districts sending us data weekly. We do have some districts that send us data up to daily. So we have a really great partnership. We go back and forth with districts, but we do receive those files at least monthly from our partner districts.
Great, thank you.
So we answered the question from the Q&A. In CCGI for high schools, districts are able to run misalignment reports to help districts clean their data. Is this a proposed idea with any integration of assist.org with CCGI at the college level?
Sure. Hi, Jackie. We just like, I mean, depending on what information is available, if there were a way for us to receive a common set of college transcripts and to be able to compare that against some common house, like the CMP for high school coursework, or whether that's assist for college coursework, then yeah, that would be a vision, right? Is to use that data in a similar way in order to identify and pass data to and through for high school students.
Are there any other questions for either Heather or April? John.
So are we allowed to not ask questions, but just to thank them? Because those were two excellent presentations that I think are very exciting for the students in California. So I really, Heather and April, I wanted to thank you both. I think they represent a lot of what's possible that we can do for students.
I'd like to move us into the more interactive portion of our day next. So go ahead to the next slide. So what we want to do is have a conversation about these 4 questions. What problems could be solved if eTranscript California were integrated with CCGI and the CSU Transfer Planner? What are the core considerations for that implementation? What supports are needed to be effective? And what other opportunities do we have for leveraging eTranscript California to support advising? So what we're going to do is pop into the chat a link to a Google Doc that will then be displaying for members of the public to see. So all the members of the panel should be able to get into that Google Doc. And what we want to do is just give you a moment to start typing in your thoughts related to these things. So we're going to take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to have you type some items in, and then we're going to open it up for discussion about the things that you put down. So Rachel, if you could go ahead and share the screen so that we can see that Google Doc. I invite members of the task force to start answering those questions. Yes, and if you want to list your name with the comments, feel free to. Okay, I want to just give thanks for the level of detail that you all are providing. And to clarify for members of the public that we take the notes from these different ways that we're gathering information during the meetings and we put them into a summary document, which is on the eTranscript website. So all the stuff, the richness that's here, you'll see reflected in those notes. We keep sort of a running document. So I want to take a moment to just ask people to unmute and maybe share some of the ideas that are coming up in here. I particularly want to look at some of the core considerations. So I have a question here. I'm going to read it, and if the person who wrote this down wants to share what their thoughts were, that would be great. Which is, how will LEAs know what is and is not in CCGI for courses that are not dual credit? And how will this impact kids' course schedules while enrolled in high school? So I don't know, Heather, if you want to take that question.
How will student LEAs know what is and is not in CCH? So for all of our partner districts, the way that that works is those districts send us everything that is part of their high school course record. And we actually work with districts as they become our partner to make sure that the information that they're sending us is a comprehensive reflection of students' transcript records. So for our partner districts, students see that. They also have a paper transcript provided by their district that they can look at both things to make sure that the data provided in CCGI is reflective of their full course list. For courses that are not dual credit, that's how we would have high school coursework in the tool. The idea with eTranscript or a similar set is that then the high schools flag courses to us, like these are courses we believe are that we think are dual enrollment. We could then have a verified set, right, that really surfaces more definitively a comprehensive list of all the dual credit options that are in addition to and separate from what their high school has reported.
That was posed. I don't know if the person who wrote that down wants to respond. Okay, I see that a couple of you have expressed some concern about the students giving permission and issues about clarity that their information could be shared. So I don't know if anyone wants to sort of share more about your thoughts on that topic.
I had commented on that. I can share. This is Mark Cohen. When April and I had discussed this, and when we talked about building the permission into the workflow on the CSU planner side, so that we could automate a request from the planner to eTranscript to pull the student's data back at the end of each grading period. So what we wouldn't want to necessarily be doing is requiring the student to request a transcript each time, as that would add delays, and it would be more efficient, though not necessarily the only way to do it, to gain the permission up front.
Then I'm seeing also that there is a lot of concern about sort of the local implementation costs. John, you've listed your name here. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your concern here?
I mean, it's just the general concern that I have as someone who's worked at an institution and are working with all the institutions in our system. Whenever we implement new technology, that always has a variety of costs. There's the technology itself, and then there's all the transition and implementation that it requires. And when we do this type of work, typically speaking, those latter costs often get downplayed and left for institutions locally to scramble to fill in and figure out. And so effective methods of implementing new technology really bakes that into the plan.
Angelique? Maybe an inadvertent hand raised. Okay. Some of the other things that I'm seeing is just a lot of very important technical considerations, ranging from accessibility to what the batch file structure would look like. And I think that those are all things that we could include in the technical specifications that get developed at the end of this. So I want to thank you for naming a lot of those particular issues. Let's talk a little bit more about the other opportunities. So I'm seeing that there's some thoughts that this is a way that we could help people better understand how their dual enrollment courses are going to count. I'd love to hear people unmute and talk a little bit more about what your thoughts are on sort of that larger issue of students understanding opportunities.
I think that might have been my comment there. And I think this is great. I think students, certainly we should make it easier for students to gain the credit that they've worked so hard for on the post-secondary side. But I also think that as students become more active participants and start to see the pieces fall into place better and understand when they're doing the work, even though it's high school dual enrollment, the relation to the credits earned and the boxes they're ticking on the post-secondary side, that they can be that they will naturally be a little bit more thoughtful about, well, what else am I doing to support this pathway as it begins to connect, whether it's to the CSU, planner, and as they continue to take a more active approach rather than an after the fact, just credit approach.
Some aspirational thinking in here about sort of doing some what if scenarios. So I'm curious, April, do you have what if scenarios in CSU Transfer Planner that allows students to figure out in advance what they should be taking and not just evaluate what they have taken?
Yeah, so some students are actually putting in future coursework so that they can see how that impacts their transfer and what courses go towards what degree requirements or prerequisites for transfer.
That'd be a feature that we could look to see how the technology could be better connected to continue to allow for those scenarios. Okay. Any other thoughts that emerged for all of you as you were filling this out that you'd want to flag for the whole group to just be aware of? Okay. Oh, I just saw in chat, Hanmi had noted that UC also has a transfer planner that's integrated with a system UC. So do you see opportunities to potentially use eTranscript as an add-on to that existing functionality?
I think so. I mean, if eTranscript, assuming that it's fully operationalized and available at all the community colleges, but, I have to sort of go back to what John was mentioning. It's, we can have the eTranscript available, but I mean, this would be one of those downstream systems that then would need to adapt and not just our planner itself, but then our receiving campuses and our application, et cetera. So there's a lot of, linkages that also need to be considered.
Sounds good. So probably what we could be doing is we're beginning to develop the technical specifications is to loop back with UC and see if what we're developing thus far is going to meet the requirements for your system as well to allow for feature functionality. All right, then I also see that we had a note from the Q&A from the public indicating that there's a lack of clarity on best practices on entering or not entering dual enrollment courses in the high school transcript. And there's a lot of inconsistencies, especially for single credit, which can be also called concurrent enrollment courses. So it seems like having the integration of eTranscript going back to the LEAs, as was noted last time, might help to solve for some of that because then the information would be automatically available. But it does seem like to John's earlier point that having really clear guidance and not just assuming that the tech is going to do all the work for you would be really important related to that. All right. Let's move on to the second half of our meeting. So if we could go back to the slide deck. We're now going to go back to look specifically at that issue of assist and A to G classes. So if we could share the slides. And next slide, please. So one of our challenges in determining the A to G status of dual enrollment courses is that the current process right now is that each course is reviewed by faculty. And given the incredible breadth of dual enrollment offerings that students might be accessing from other institutions, one of the possibilities that we could have is to align A to G with CalGETC. So CalGETC is a new standard that's jointly created by CSU and UC that address the general eligibility requirements. So if we did something like this, it would allow us to use, in essence, a crosswalk to map courses that are already in Assist to indicate whether they are fulfilling A to G requirements. So this might be sort of a way to begin to address the complexity of faculty review while making it work within a structure that's already there. So next slide. One of the things that I also want to sort of flag is that what we're talking about here today is the technical infrastructure and not the process by which the faculty would make that decision. That would belong to a different body, but we're assuming that if we had faculty agreement, that we could look at technological solutions for sharing that information between entities. So one idea is that we could use Assist as the entity that does this. So as you heard earlier, it's already holding a lot of information about the courses that students would be taking for dual enrollment, and including information about the way those courses are considered when a student would get to a UC or a CSU, including whether it meets general education requirements, if it's meeting requirements toward a specific major at a specific institution. We know that in the future, so right now, Assist has the CSU breadth and the IGETC standards, and it's going to be adapted to include CalGETC. So we know that information would be there. And we would have to resolve some considerations, for example, for dual enrollment courses offered by CSU. But this would create a place where we already have a source of data that could be easily adapted. Next slide. The other things that would be helpful if we're considering Assist as that neutral place that could keep the information about the status of dual enrollment classes, or classes that could potentially be transferred regardless of when a student takes it, is that Assist is currently developing an API, which is a technological tool that would make it easier for information to be passed than it is right now. And so we could develop considerations for how that API would be developed to make sure that it would fulfill the needs for CSU Transfer Planner and the CCGI tools. What would be interesting about this opportunity is that it really would designate Assist as the source of truth for what the status of a class is regarding how it would be accepted by a CSU or a UC. With an API, this information can be continuously refreshed, so we worry less about sort of stale data, which was an issue that I noted a number of you had flagged in the document where you were having your notes in earlier. And so we have this, this possibility that we could use Assist's API to connect with eTranscript California to create the definitive flag for what the status of those courses are. And that's really important because right now that information is disjointed sometimes at local college campuses because their curricular data and their transcript system are separate from each other. So whether or not we would have the A to G flags housed at Assist, we are looking at the integration of Assist with eTranscript California to be able to pass information about the status of courses. Next slide. And the final reason why we thought Assist might be an interesting possibility to consider is that it is already providing tools that are advising students about how their courses are going to count when they go to CSU or UC. And if we're in a scenario where we're expecting more and more high school students to be taking college courses while they're still in high school, in essence, you can see that the time frame for transfer is moving back. So students will be taking dual enrollment courses in high school, hoping that they will count toward a major ultimately. And so if a student is trying to make a decision about what dual enrollment courses to enroll in, and they're thinking simultaneously about fulfilling their requirements to get into CSU and UC, as well as their desire to accelerate progress in a major, having one place where students can go and they can see all the characteristics of how those courses are recognized by CSU and UC, we sort of reduce the administrative burden on students to have one place to go to get the information that they need that can then be consistently replicated in other advising tools, such as the ones that CCGI and CSU produces. Next slide. So that was the proposal that we put forward from the original, the document that went out to everyone. So I sort of want to open it up for questions and see what questions you have about this idea. I do see we have one question in chat that came from the Q&A, which is that when I say courses under CalGETC, do I mean college courses only? Yes, CalGETC would be applying to college level courses, even though they might be taken as dual enrollment by a high school student. Any questions from the task force, or would you like to go straight to typing into a document? Because that's going to be our next step. Okay, let's hop to the next slide and I'll share. So we're going to be going back to the same Google Doc as before, and I'm going to be asking you to respond to 3 questions, which is what are core considerations for identifying the A to G status of dual enrollment courses? What are the core considerations for using Assist to document the A to G status? And who should be involved in reviewing potential solutions? So Rashila, if you can share your screen to take us to that Google Doc, I'm going to invite the task force to type your responses to those questions. Yeah. You just scroll down a little bit further and you'll be able to see them. Okay, I think I'm going to move us out of the standalone work and move into a discussion. So the first question is, what are the core considerations for identifying the A to G status of dual enrollment courses? So the first point that's up here is that we have to have an agreed method for how we're going to arrive at articulation. And that is absolutely correct. And it's really not in the purview of this group to come up with that designation. But I think that what we can say is that if we could get to an agreement, so let's just imagine we're in a world where we have gotten agreement about what this process is going to look like. Let's talk about what we have to do for the underlying technological tools. And that relates to the second point that we see here, which is that currently Assist has been set up for transferable courses. So we are looking at a change in scope for what Assist would be. So we put forward the proposal that if A to G was benchmarked against CalGETC, then those courses would be there. And it would be more complicated if we were looking at other courses that would meet A to G eligibility requirements that don't count for CalGETC. But I want to open up the discussion about whether it seems feasible to expand the purview of Assist to be the place that we document the A to G status of courses, presuming we have the right process for agreeing to courses and that the courses were in the system. What are your thoughts on that idea?
I would say since Assist lives with UC in terms of the fiscal management responsibility, Assist is supposed to be the repository for articulation. And I mean, that's why it's based on the transferable courses. And so it doesn't just expand the scope of Assist. I mean, it changes what Assist is altogether if you're going to expand it to include, and I don't even want to call it high school articulation because we're talking about, to me, I can't even wrap my head around it at the moment to think that Assist would be something more than the higher education articulation course, and because we don't even have articulation between the 4 years, right? Between CSU and UC, it's really one directional from the community colleges to the 4-year institutions.
I'm curious because UC is also responsible for the course management portal, which holds the A to G courses. Do you think it would be more appropriate to have the dual enrollment courses be documented in CMP?
I think that might be an option that we should consider, because at least with the dual enrollment programs that are official, so if you put the individual student taking a community college course on their own, sort of off to the side, and you only think about the official dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment or early college programs, the high schools have signed some sort of MOU or some sort of agreement with the community colleges that are offering, their list of courses. And so the high school has already determined that students might be taking these courses at the college to fulfill either a high school graduation requirement or an A through G requirement. And so then in that respect, it could be a part of their A through G course list.
Would it be feasible then to, if you think about a mechanism that would help reduce the burden of, the UC faculty evaluating each of those dual enrollment courses, would something like a crosswalk to what's in Assist be valuable to support that review?
Okay, so the high school articulation team reviews the high school courses that are submitted for A through G based on criteria that are set up by the UC faculty, but if UC faculty don't actually review the high school courses themselves, so they wouldn't be reviewing the dual enrollment courses either. They're reviewing them for articulation purposes. But so I'm not quite following your question, Kathy, sorry.
No worries. I had understood that one of the reasons why dual enrollment courses are not currently in CNP is that the volume would be difficult to process. And I may have misunderstood that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
just,
mean, it's certainly the volume because it's not UC faculty. Actually, it's our high school articulation team, which is all of 3 people for the entire state, reviewing courses for, 2,000 high schools already. And then you add in a college catalog for 116 community colleges, it becomes quite a resource constraint.
absolutely. So this is an opportunity for us to be creative. So we do have this challenge that we heard Heather articulate, that when we're trying to provide advice to students about whether they've taken the right classes to be eligible to go to CSU and UC, right now, a lot of those courses show as yellow because there's no way to know. And we are going to have a lot more high schools engaging in dual enrollment, which means that more and more of that advising tool will go to yellow and not be able to provide clear information and could cause confusion as students are trying to fill their college applications. So we have this opportunity to think about the technical infrastructure that would make it easier to be able to document the status of those classes. Clearly, it's not sky's the limit. We can't have an unlimited number of people reviewing things. But are there ways to leverage the information currently housed in Assist, to link it to the information about the dual enrollment classes to help us determine their A to G eligibility? So for example, if a lot of high schools go big on doing shared, English composition classes that help fulfill the 4-year English requirement, could we map that against CalGETC and make it easier for those courses to get certified and then entered into CMP? I'm just thinking creatively here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about ways to get around this problem. John.
So I'm wondering, to your question, and I totally defer to you, Javi, on how best this might work. But I could see a possibility where if we have a crosswalk built into Assist, that the CMP could do an API call to Assist to collect that information, right? So you wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to have a lot of review. So you wouldn't put any additional burden on the high school review team, because the articulation had already happened. Now, the question would be like how to handle the non-transferable courses. I'm not sure how best to do that. Like for me, like it actually, when you were saying that, as you were talking about Assist as an articulation tool, and you later clarified that it's a higher education articulation tool and a very one-way method, it's worth us thinking about as a state whether or not we want a more comprehensive articulation tool that would pull those two things together and potentially also address the CSU to UC articulation, because we have students that transfer between those institutions as well. Just a thought.
What do others think about that idea? April.
So I think there is the ability to use the CalGETC, or today what's in Assist is CSU GE breadth areas as well as iGETC areas, to do the initial mapping between A to G courses and community college or high school or CSU or UC courses. But it would require widening that definition, because as we've already discussed, those CalGETC tags, if you want to call them, or CSU GE breadth tags, are on the community college courses specifically. They're not on the CSU and the UC courses. So we would have to look at that as a wider area. And then we would also have to address the courses that are transferable, which are today able to be used to fulfill A through G requirements, but do not have that CalGETC tag. So then there is a little bit, I think if we have deemed the course transferable, which means we will accept it for credit, it would make sense potentially that it would be accepted for credit at the high school for A through G as well. So I think there's, the pieces are there. We just need to think about how we kind of potentially widen some of that mapping or tagging of courses and assist.
Right, I am in agreement with that. I think that, you know, we just have to be sure that we recognize there are courses that would be part of dual enrollment that are not transferable. There are courses that are transferable but are not CalGETC. And then there are courses that would be recognized as CalGETC. And then sort of amongst those, at least the second two categories, there are some that meet CSU breadth and some that meet UC 7-course pattern kind of areas as well. So, you know, thinking creatively, is it possible to expand the scope of assist? Yes, I think it's a matter of, you know, defining how far you expand it, and then within the expansion, what's the priority? Is it getting the A through G in dual enrollment, or as John said, you know, is it about expanding amongst the higher ed segments and even within UC and CSU articulation? I mean, overall, it would be like a very, this is already a very huge endeavor, right? And so, yeah, I think that, you know, I'm like a practical, pragmatic person. And so in my mind, I'm just thinking, wow, how is this all going to work? And we really need to figure out what is the priority here. And if it's really about, you know, if you start with eTranscript and getting that working and functioning, I mean, if that's the priority, and is dual enrollment and the A through G piece the obvious next priority? And maybe this, I'm, you know, maybe that's already been decided. I don't know, but.
Well, right, because we're in a planning phase, is to think about all the things that we wish the technology could do for us that would reduce the burden on students and make it easier for practitioners to be able to get the information they need to evaluate people's prior credit. And so it's preferable when we're in this dreaming phase to think about all the things, because what it may result in is a set of specifications for how eTranscript gets scaled, or how, as part of the career education master plan, there's a joint ask for what would happen in eTran and in Assist and in CMP that would make it possible to solve for those larger scope of problems that were articulated early on. We are informed some by the student experience audit that C2C conducted, where we were hearing a lot about students having pain points related to dual enrollment and A to G and getting their transcripts across, which is why we're this big right now. But to Hanmi's point, this is not going to be something where there'll suddenly be just this huge avalanche of work that falls onto institutions that you're just expected to do in your spare time. So this is really the place for this group of people to be identifying what you would need for it to be successful, and then for us to begin to scope out some timelines for how we could move that forward. So that's, I think, some of the thinking in there. John.
I just want to take a minute to elevate one of the comments in the Q&A and juxtapose it against what you're saying, because I totally agree. Like when I take a look at the types of things that we have to accomplish in these types of technology projects, and especially ones that involve intersegmental integration and coordination, they're exceptionally challenging. But all those challenges already exist. And right now they're falling on the individual students at application, right? And in their families and support networks, whatever they may have. And we all understand how complex it is. I think for them, they don't understand how complex it is. They're just facing a web of complexity that's very challenging to navigate and ends up having exceptionally disproportionate impact in who it has the biggest impact on. So I think we have an opportunity to take on a very difficult burden as a state and take that off of some of our most vulnerable students. And as hard as that is, I think we should all, take this opportunity to lean into it if we can.
I want to invite folks that haven't spoken up yet. If there's something that you're thinking about that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it.
One thing that I would add that I just wanted to put back in the room to say is that currently assist is where both CSU guidance documents as well as kind of that screenshot that I shared from on the CMP. It's where counselors and students are directed as they're currently looking to try to cross-reference all the pieces and understand how a course may or may not fulfill A through G. So I just want to state that it is actually already, it's the current place where folks are looking. I think there are ways that we can make it clearer and easier, but I just wanted to put that in as a note that is actually the existing place that folks are referred to from the practitioner seat in K-12 to try to make sense of how to correctly identify A through G. And it seems like there are opportunities to make that simpler.
So we're nearly at time, and so this is what I'm going to suggest. It seems like we've got a couple of possibilities for ways that this problem could be solved. And we probably need to be consulting with the more technical folks who work on these tools to figure out the right way to potentially put these together. Reminding everyone that our goal is that we're working toward a set of recommendations that would go into a report in June that will then inform the Career Education Master Plan. So we don't have to make any decisions today on this. So I'm curious to see if anyone would be willing to join just a small working group to explore these issues a little bit further and maybe bring a proposal back to the group for our June meeting. Is there anyone who'd be interested in joining that effort? Or assigning someone from your institution? Mike says yes. Ami says yes. Thank you. April says yes. Wonderful. So what we're going to do is if I did not get your name, please reach out to me by email afterwards, and we'll follow up and set up some meetings and figure out who the right people would be. But our goal then is to bring something back to you all in a couple of months. All right. So that was the set of topics for today's meeting. Looking forward to next month. We're going to be digging into the question of credit for prior learning. So up until now, we've been very focused on dual enrollment and the process as students are moving from high school into post-secondary. Credit for prior learning is an issue that focuses more in the community college space right now, but it has real implications for students when they transfer, and making sure that when a student is given credit for prior learning, that's getting transcribed in a way that it's going to count toward their ultimate majors, especially if they transfer. So we'll be digging into that a little bit more in April. And in May, we're going to be talking about the next level of complexity, which is competency-based education, which is when we're outside of the realm of traditional courses as a way to think about learning. This is where we're really going to start to dig into the questions of what would inform an LER, a learning and employment record, or some sort of tool that we could share with employers that might be different than the way we want to transcript information in an academic context. And in June, what we'll be doing is bringing together the various ideas that have come out of these meetings we've had and the small groups that are working on the side, so that we can come up with a clear set of recommendations. So, great. Are there any final comments or things that people want to say before we close up for today? All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for joining us in this dreamy space we're in right now when we're thinking about what's possible. I think that we do have a unique opportunity right now because of the Career Education Master Plan, and stepping outside of our usual to think about what would make things better for students is an exciting task. So thank you all for being part of it. We'll see you all next month.